45 when you had to stop at 35.
Skip, that's what you do.
That's the point.
That's what you do. Every time I call something into question, I'm jealous.
No.
Skip, I did what I did.
I never said you were jealous of Baker Mayfield.
Skip, I did what I did. You make it seem like I was a bum. I'm in the effing Hall of Fame.
Okay,
I got 3 Super Bowls.
So what?
So what?
He's way better than you were.
I'm better than you.
Better.
Skip, what did I got to see what you do? You take personal shots.
No, I don't take personal shots. You started it.
Time out. You would take a personal shot at me.
I didn't take a personal shot at you.
Wait a minute.
What are you talking about?
You would take a personal...
Put your glasses back on.
Can I finish? You're willing to take a personal shot at me to say this man is better than me because I say he's playing bad this year?
Well, because you just
Go ahead.
You disrespect him. It's just so. You know what? It's beneath your dignity.
You would disrespect me to support him.
No, well, I'll support him over anybody because he's the greatest player who ever played your game, and it's by far.
Have at it.
Okay,
Take off, bro.
I'm going to have at it because I'm going to have at you.
Let me. Skip Bayless literally said you started it.
Right.
And he's mad because Shannon Sharpe goes hard on Tom Brady. Sometimes he gets nitpicky, but we've all seen Skip Bayless debate and defend people. So I guess, good for the goose, good for the gander and all that. I could never be a 60-year-old grown man screaming he started it. I'm 35.
It's kind of like what they do, and you can kind of tell that they're not going to beat each other up or anything. But the last couple of years, I mean, me, I'm a fan of Tom Brady, but I've been saying for a while now that he's pretty much done, man. He shouldn't have come back this year. Like, he's not the same guy. And everyone gets old, and it happened to Manny, it happened to Elway, it happened to everybody. And, I can appreciate Tom's passion for the game, but the reality is that he is 45. He does have a lot of great accolades to his career, but, if someone in the media says, look, dude, you're old and you're part of the problem while your team is struggling, well, that's just fair criticism. And why Skip decides to get all butthurt about that and try to make a comparison to Shannon, who played 2 different positions altogether anyway.
Contact positions.
Yeah.
He's greater than you because he played forever. So I love Frank Gore. He's one of my favorite players ever because he survived, I think, 2 ACL injuries, one in college, when that was a death sentence for running backs. I think he actually cracked top 5 all time in yards. As much as I love him, he played longer than Barry Sanders. I'm not taking him over Barry Sanders. And I know that Barry Sanders, well, he left with gas in the tank. Okay, he played longer than Earl Campbell and Eric Dickerson and Tony Dorsett. And I think he even played longer than Emmitt Smith. You can get it. It was just, it's such a bad comparison because on top of the fact that now you can't really hit quarterbacks. I know that Brady, his career started in the early 2000s when the game was a lot more rugged in that regard, but he still played a substantial amount of time in a quarterback-friendly time period. And Shannon Sharpe went over the middle as a tight end. Like, you cannot – why then like Morton Anderson, at one point, he was the longest playing 40, player ever.
Right? He was like
right, exactly. Yeah. So 5 years ago when Tom Brady was only 16 or 17 years deep or whatever it was Morton Anderson better because he's one of the greatest kickers of all time?
Right.
It's just a stupid argument. And
yeah, I think if I'm going to compare like an Iron Man player that I've seen in my lifetime who was older and still played at a high level, it's going to be Darryl Green from the Redskins.
Yeah.
But he knew when it was time to call it a day. But his last year, he was still like top of his game, and I think he was like 45 or 46 at that point.
Because he still had insane speed. He was a veteran. He knew what route you were going to run. He knew if he had to tackle you, if he could make a business decision.
Right.
People get mad at that, but he didn't struggle to get contracts either. So good for him. I think that, like, it's crazy to me to make that argument because I watched Steve McNair and Donovan McNabb play through horrible injuries. injuries where they probably, I don't think they'd be able to be on the field now. I always kind of conflate the two. One of them didn't want to leave the field when they had a punctured lung and got, dragged off.
Yeah.
If those guys had shortened careers because of that, does that diminish what they did? Because that's in the same spectrum of argument that Skip is making. And yeah, I would probably say that Tom Brady had a better career than Shannon Sharpe. That Tom Brady is a better quarterback than Shannon Sharpe was a tight end. Now then again, as the resident, Brady skeptic, Shannon never deflated footballs. He wasn't a game manager tight end for the first 25% of his. No, that's too much. Probably 15 or 20% of his career. He wasn't relying on the defense to win. He didn't have the greatest head coach ever. He didn't get spanked by the dumb Manning brother in the Super Bowl. There's a lot of rough spots in Tom Brady's career that we don't talk about. And I just like to remind people of that because he's been so great for so long. People think that he came in the league throwing 30 touchdowns a year, and he absolutely wasn't. I'm not trying to diminish Tom Brady, but I am trying to remind people of how good Shannon Sharpe was, and what he would do in the league today would be pretty nasty.
Right.
So, he's one of my favorite players. He's one of my favorite media personality guys. I'm a huge Shannon Sharpe fan, so I am biased in that regard as well.
Well, before we get into our monthly rants about our teams, although it feels like the Steelers are doing much better than the Broncos right now, but I did want to say a quick, not a great thing to say about, but we have to say rest in peace to Ronnie Hillman, who recently passed at 31. I believe it was liver cancer, that took his life. I didn't even know he was ill. But that's sort of like the way it is. Like, we don't really keep track of a lot of the former players that come and go. But that was recent news, and that just really sucked, and kind of feel bad for his family and everything here in the holiday season when that happened.
It will change how they view Christmas and New Year's forever.
Mm-hmm.
All
right, man. Well, give us your rant. I'm going to let you kick it off first with your Steelers. How do you feel? Good, bad, mediocre? What do you got?
The future is bright. The future is bright. I feel like the Steelers are in a great position. If you look around the division, the Bengals are going to be good for a really long time. That's concerning. But the Browns, their roster's dead in the water. I'm not concerned about them. They have aging players, guys who are up on contracts. They're not going to be able to pay everybody and Deshaun. I don't know. I still don't know how good Deshaun Watson even is. I don't care about his last 2 games. He hasn't played in forever.
Right.
But it didn't look good. Like, if it matters at all, then it doesn't look good. And I look at the Ravens, and their decline is going to be pretty quick too. They have aging players on defense. That's the strength of their team. I am a believer in Lamar Jackson, but his future is up in the air for them. They're going to have to pay him. Paying quarterbacks, it hurts. I don't know how much longer Harbaugh is going to be there. The fan base is getting tired of him. They don't look like a great team anymore. They have no one to throw the ball to except Mark Andrews, who's a stud. They're always going to be able to find a running back. They're Baltimore. That's what they do. But it was 2-3 years ago they had 7 All-Pros, and it felt like they were going to be the guys fighting out the conference with the Chiefs. And they don't have that feel about them anymore.
Right.
And so when I look at my team, I don't know if Pickett's going to be the guy. I think he's played a lot better than what his stats suggest. He's got a lot to work on, like finding Deontay Johnson. That'd be a great start. The line sucks, but I look at the rest of the offense, and George Pickens is amazing. He should not have been a second-round player.
I could have told you that before the draft started.
I was screaming. I was screaming. Like, for him, look, he fell in the draft because he had some injury concerns and he was hard to coach. But whenever you say they're hard to coach and you can't find any actual stories on it, this is an acceptable risk. I mean, Micah Parsons was also hard to coach too, and I'll take him any day of the week.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson's good. We have him for another year. Our left tackle has been actually, if he keeps trending this way, I'll be able to say with a straight face he had a solid year. And then our defense is Steeler defense. It's not, defense isn't as important as it used to be, unfortunately for us. But we have T.J. Watt. Alex Highsmith is a good second pass rusher. Cameron Hayward is still a monster. Minka Fitzpatrick still arguably is the best safety. We have,
Speaking of which, because you mentioned it about defense, a couple weeks ago on Sunday, when the football was playing, I had, of course I was working, but I was watching Red Zone. Of course, I get all the updates here and there from the great Scott Hansen. But that was a day in which we saw like 2 or 3 quarterbacks go out.
Yeah.
White from the Jets. Pickett got hurt. I forget where the other one was. But
Flacco got hurt too, which was crazy.
So you and I have discussed at length about offensive line and how important or less important it become now, where we kind of think that it's been kind of a lesser issue in terms of importance for NFL people than it used to be with, like, the old school running games and whatnot. Do you still feel that way, or do you think they need to reevaluate that line of thinking? Like, for me personally, watching how some of these guys are just getting crushed. Like, I know some of these coaches are going into their drafts and everything. It's like, okay, if I get a hybrid guy who can run around, maybe we can alleviate some of the pressure from the line. But the problem is the hybrid quarterback really hasn't shown to be consistent in passing, at least the ones that are more run heavy.
It's rough.
At this stage, do they need to get back to concentrating on the line than they used to?
They're screwed, because I think the answer would be yes, but I don't think that they can, because
of college.
Because college and high school coaching is just like, I didn't used to believe it, because it sounded, I first heard that argument 5 or 6 years ago. From I heard it on Fox, ESPN, other outlets. Like, I don't think the Athletic was around back then, but even kind of the higher end, like we do journalism, we do better opinion pieces, places like the Athletic, that the coaching for those positions is just so bad. And it didn't make sense to me, because why would the coaching be bad, right? You're going to have a lot of as many retreads as the NFL has, and God knows there's too many retreads in the NFL. College is even worse, just because think about how many NFL teams there are, or think about how many college schools that play football, right? So It didn't make any sense to me. And I still don't know why it's the case, but at this point, I feel like I have to accept it. So am I going to trade up to maybe take a right tackle in the top 10 because they can actually play right tackle? That feels wrong, right? Like the Bengals did that with Andre Smith.
Right.
And he was good until he was awful. There's various reasons why he became awful. Panu Sewell, who was kind of the poster boy for that type of thinking. He's doing great with the Lions, but he was getting embarrassed as a left tackle. And then, if you recall, I was screaming, take Jamar Chase because he's a generational talent. And then I was screaming, but I hope the Bengals don't take Jamar Chase because he's a fucking generational talent.
Right.
But that might just be like, just a weird pairing, right? And the Bengals needed a line. You don't want your quarterback to get Andrew Luck. So, I mean, to me, man, I think the answer is free agency. I think you want to do a couple of teams, what they've done in the past rings true to me. The Chiefs, they saw how bad their guards were. Their guards were just awful, and Patrick Mahomes got hurt, and that's probably why they lost to Tampa. I don't know if a healthy Mahomes wins that game, but I know that the injured
Oh,
Mahomes.
he tried his ass off. He
despite
all that problem, he was still trying to get that game.
Yeah,
won.
Mahomes, like the whole Mahomes isn't tough anymore. That it died that night.
Mm-hmm.
But they just went out and they just got 2 guards. And if you look, and I used to do this, I used to pull up the free agency lists of years past, and I consistently found average to really good guards. And some guys got better, maybe because they weren't injured, because it got better coaching, better scheme fit, whatever. I think that given how many guards there are, given how many guards were busted tackles who found success at the guard position, I think the answer for teams is they have to get better coaching as well. That they also have to get more inventive. If I look at what the Bengals did, to give them some props, they went out, they drafted, their line got really bad the last couple of years with Dalton, and they drafted a tackle in the 2nd round and the 1st round one year. It was Jonah Williams. I want to say it was the 1st round tackle, and it bombed. And then ever since then, their line's been bad. Their line was awful last year, and they're like, no, we finally have the guy in Burrow. So they drafted guys. They signed, what's that dude's name? He was a Cowboy. I can't remember his name. He was
lineman?
The offensive lineman. You're going to have to turn to free agency. I think you're going to have to start hoping that offensive linemen play longer. I mean, look what Whitworth's departure did to the Rams, and that guy he should be a Hall of Famer.
So is it now going to be more, not so much about whether or not they're individually talented, but more like scheme, I guess?
Yeah, and I hate it because I hate coaches getting to scream scheme and then do whatever they want because they are self-masturbatory about how smart they are, right? But the line play sucks. Like I think of it this way: in the '90s, you saw the Great Wall is what people referred to the Cowboys line as, and then you had the Denver line, and they played radically different, although they got very similar results.
Right?
Can you think of any line in the last 10 or 15 years that was as good as those?
You mean as far as like the back in the day with those two?
Yeah.
No. Well, maybe 3 or 4 years ago with Tennessee, because
maybe, but that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's a maybe.
Yeah.
Part of it isn't the line's fault either. You can't game manage yourself. You can't game manage yourself to a win. You can't just run the ball to a win either, because the Cowboys line, they beat the fuck out of people, but they were not great at pass blocking. All those Troy Aikman concussion memes, those are things for a reason. Like that guy got his ass beat out there.
But that's kind of my issue is that, like I said, we saw these young quarterbacks. Now, I don't know how good White is. I know he was a backup to Wilson.
Yeah.
But I worry for him and Pickett, and I know people are like, oh, my God, he's just sticking up for Pickett. Well, it's not so much just that. It's how are we ever going to see some of these quarterbacks grow in these systems? And you can go all the way to Justin Fields and everyone else. Is like he's running for his life, too. And I'm sure he doesn't want to, but he does. And it's like, how are you going to solve this problem? Because if, luckily for Justin, he's a little bit of a bigger, stockier quarterback, but, Pickett's tiny. So is White. And, like, they take hits. The one that White took was just a midsection, but it looked like he got
speared. Wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Goldberg. You got Goldberg on him.
Yeah. No.
And he actually broke a rib. I mean.
Yeah. No, that's the.
So, but this guy, he clearly has a passion. He wanted to come back and play, but they weren't going to let him do it.
And then Flacco got his bell rung too. And I know he's older and mobile, but he's also a veteran. Part of it,
and that's really what it's going to come down to is you got these other quarterbacks, whether you're Mahomes, Cousins, or whatever, and they're getting rid of the ball quicker. That's the only other alternative because you can't hold on to that line. That's what's killing Russell Wilson. And then everyone's like, well, Russell needs a run. Well, we saw what happened there when he did that. This guy, is as tough as he wants to be. Like I think he knows his time's up with that, and so he
has
wants to
to
be like,
choose.
yeah, he wants to be able to stay in the pocket and pass. Like that's what you want
He has to
when
pick
you have a
his
certain like
spots.
Lamar's not going to be able to do it forever.
No,
So
he even gained weight, and so here's the thing too. I was pulling up like data to find out if hybrid quarterbacks got hurt more, and so I found two sources of information. One guy has and full disclosure, I don't know this guy. He posts his credentials. I don't know if they're true, so take it with a grain of salt. He claims to have a doctorate in like physical kinesiology or something like that. He has a Twitter page where he talks about injuries. He takes issue with like the injury prone thing. And he has data that suggests that hybrid or mobile quarterbacks do not get hurt more. And there was a Ravens fan site, because this is very topical for Ravens fans, where they did one of the ladies who runs the site, her best friend is an actuary, kind of like I think Hog Driver used to be one. Fucking math nerds. Shout out to Hog Driver, you fucking nerd. Merry Christmas,
nerds.
nerd. Fucking
Jade is a nerd.
nerd. And they did a study and they found something that's similar, because a lot of times, like, we forget, like Kyler Murray, he popped his knee on a non-contact injury, and they have data that suggests that, like, a lot of, and it makes sense, hamstrings and ACLs, apparently the bulk of those injuries occur on non-contact, typically like in a cutting or explosive movement thing, which is kind of horrifying. You think that
Which
somebody's
makes sense.
body
Happened to Bridgewater
is so
too.
explosive that their knee cannot handle it. Like that's crazy.
I guess it just seems like when it happens, it seems to be. But I think I understand the point is that it seems worse. Like when we see Robert Griffith III, he blows out his knee. Bridgewater, even though Bridgewater did it on his own, it just seems like sometimes when it happens, we're thinking that maybe it's because they are hybrid or more frail. Like Vic, I think one time hurt himself as
he
well.
got hurt on non-contact, and then you get the weird ones where, like, Cam Newton, what ended his career was that rotator cuff, but he also just took a lot of hard shots. Now, granted, when you're as big as he is, I mean, Cam Newton's one of the most talented athletes I think the world's ever seen, because he's one of the 5 most talented quarterbacks I've ever seen.
I think Cam actually looked to hit people.
yeah. I mean, there was. I did see cornerbacks go, nope, nah, don't want it. I watched Darrelle Revis famously run away from Tim Tebow. He was like, nah, I'm not.
Did you catch any of the Niner game last week?
I did not.
There was I like caught a little bit of it, but because Brock Purdy is a guy that I kind of wanted Denver to take later in the rounds, but he's in there now, filling in, of course, and I guess he had made a play where he ran and then ran out of bounds, and the commentator's like, yeah, the coaches, I'm sure, have told him, don't even think about trying to take on any backs, just run out of bounds. We don't need you hurt. You're a third string guy, so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, they're going to the playoffs unless things like really, really get weird. I think to circle back to what teams need to do for the offensive line, maybe we have to stop calling guys busts as much. Like, if you look at Garrett Bowles,
mm-hmm.
When he was drafted, I said, you're going to take a left tackle for a left tackle, and that's for the sake of doing it, and he's going to be awful because he was all talent, zero fundamentals in college. And he was awful for 2 years. He got a lot better, and people, it's the reputation thing, right? By the time he became good, and he's a good left tackle, I still have to fight with people about that. It was year 3, year 4. He got that extension. I can't remember the tackle's name. He plays for the Titans. I think he's hurt right now. It took him a long time as well. So point is that it sucks, because if you have a tackle that you believe in, a lineman you believe in, but he's taking a while to develop, he's getting your quarterback blown up, what do you fucking do? That's the issue. So shorter passing plays, To be honest, like I'm a big Mike Shanahan fan, and those moving pockets are pretty sweet. Those rollouts are pretty sweet. Um, Having your quarterback run to the sideline, if he's going to get blown up, at least you're getting 15 yards and maybe an ejection now, right? Like you've hit the point, and this is why the rules are the way that they are. We've gone too far with protecting quarterbacks, but the game sucks when you're watching second and third stringers. Now you have a guy like Mike White who's exciting, or you have a guy like Brock Purdy who's playing on a stacked team, so it becomes more watchable. That's one thing. But there's this old poster. His name was Ravage with like 5 exclamation marks. I don't know.
Oh, I know who Ravage is.
Yeah. I bet you do. He was at the start of this. Like if you go back on the rule changing timeline, the first big one was Palmer because he got that awful knee injury right in the wild card playoffs. I think it was 05 or 04, and they're like, okay, if you just can't hit a quarterback in the knee straight up anymore. Like it's just bad. From that standpoint to then the rule changes that came after Brady popped his ACL to where we are now, we've probably gone a little too far. But Ravage's point is, you can say that you want tough football and Iron Man this and Iron Man that, but nobody stops watching until the quarterbacks start sucking. So there is some truth there. I will tell you this. If I'm an agent and I represent an offensive lineman who's any good, I might tell him to pull a Joe Thomas and be like, look, you ain't going to win shit, but you find yourself a city that you love and you let them pay you millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. Because Joe Thomas had another Pro Bowler next to him, and they had a good right guard or right tackle. Like they had a top 3 line for several years. It didn't matter because their quarterbacks sucked. It's just there's only so many cap dollars and so many draft picks to go around, and heaven forbid your offensive line get hurt because God, it sucks.
Yeah, which makes you think that, well, in the long run, maybe scheme is better because even though Denver in the late 90s had a great offensive lineman, you had Alex Gibbs who had the whole cutting down the defenders, which we can't use anymore. But at the time, it was a system that was allowed, and he was very good at it. So
yep, and Shannon talked about that too.
Yeah, maybe now's the time just to have some offensive line coach who can come up with a better scheme. And maybe they're out there, we're just not paying attention. But right now, it seems like every single team has a problem with offensive line. Like, it doesn't matter how good or bad they are. I mean, I've been watching the last couple of weeks of Buffalo, and, like, Allen has been under a tremendous pressure.
And they have they have one of the best lines in football. And that's the bitch of it, too, is, like, some of the teams who have great lines aren't that great. Like I'm happy for the Lions, and they're on a hot streak. They're really not that good. They have one of the best lines in football. The Commanders, surprisingly, I don't know how, they have one of the better lines in football.
Right.
And they're not a great team either. If you put them in the AFC, that's a really tough 5-win team, a really tough 4-win team. The AFC is so much better than the NFC this year. It's actually kind of disgusting. And think about it. Like the NFC North, the Vikings have one of the worst they have a negative point differential.
Do you think it's better in terms of actual teams that win the Super Bowl, or do you think it's just more competitive than the NFC?
I think the teams are just better. Like
really? Even over like the Eagles or
the Eagles are the shining. So the Niners would be the best team in football if they had a quarterback I could count on. They didn't even have that with Jimmy G. The Eagles look really, really strong. They're arguably the best team. But if you go to the AFC, you have the Chiefs and their pedigree with Mahomes and Reed. You have the monstrosity that are the Buffalo Bills. Nobody wants to play the Bengals. Like nobody. God damn it! Nobody wants to play the fucking Bengals. And I think
we'll get to our top 5. We'll get to that.
But I'm just saying, like those 3 teams are at least on the level of the Eagles, and the Eagles are the best that the NFC has to offer. It's rough. But Kirk Cousins forever, baby. I won't Kirk Cousins forever.
All right,
At this point,
there isn't much to talk about with the Broncos. I've already kind of touched on Russell Wilson getting hurt a couple weeks ago against the Chiefs. Tough game. They tried to fight and win, which they've done all year long. We did manage to beat the Cardinals. That's a big whoop. We almost lost that in the end anyway, but luckily defense.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What do you think about the rumors that they're bringing back Hackett? How do you feel about that?
I think it'd be a mistake. But look, one thing I've learned about the Broncos, they never listen to me anyway, so it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter who the owner is.
Yeah, you just, I don't know. Something's got to give. Like, I don't know if it's all Hackett. I don't know if it's all Russell. I just know that it's not working. And injuries, of course, I don't know what it is. It always seems like we are like one of the worst teams with injuries besides the Niners. Like, it's really weird. But the Niners, they have depth, so they're able to like plop a guy in and they keep rolling. We cannot do that.
Yeah.
It's a scratch year. Everybody was excited about beating the Cardinals. I was kind of like, okay, whatever, but really it does nothing for me. It's just this. I kind of packed it in a long ago with this team this year. I've just been watching the rest of the games, enjoying that. I do enjoy watching the Steelers win. I mean, I know they kind of got their own problems, but I'm kind of hoping in the end they can find a way to outlast the Ravens, but I don't know if they got enough to do that this year.
Probably not. The Watt injury. We have depth at a couple positions, but for us, we needed a lot of things to go right just to be as good as we were last year. And we were not really all that good last year. We were one of those. You know what? For most teams, it'd be a tough out, and then we got paired against the Chiefs and got slapped on national television. So we weren't even a tough out. But I think for your Broncos, I don't like the Bradley Chubb trade, and I thought it was a bad trade, and I still do. But at least you get a first-round pick. Now, it might be a first-round pick from the Niners, and they're good enough to oops their way into the NFC Championship game, which means they're only a little bit of luck away from being the Super Bowl champs, but it's still a first-round pick. So that is something to look forward to. So there is that.
Yeah, I probably, the Chubb thing, like, I get it, but I also get it that I guess part of me doesn't really care because the defense is still playing at a pretty high level. But, how much is that as Evero? Is he going to be there next year because he's friends with Hackett? That's a whole other argument to be made. But, yeah, it just, it's really just kind of now it's like we're already locked in with Russell Wilson for at least 3 or 4 years. We got to make that work somehow.
Yeah.
So we got that. But I think if you're going to, since we went and did that, and I've made this argument before, is that we shouldn't have gone with a rookie head coach because that just doesn't work. We needed a veteran there, and we need to go out and get one, especially if we're going to try to utilize Russ's remaining years, which means that we should be trying to play for the playoffs and a Super Bowl. We shouldn't be like trying to find our way with the new coach. That's stupid. I just don't know if the organization has enough guts to fire Hackett. They should, even though it's happened to other organizations, but I just don't know if they got the guts to do it. Anyway, before we get into our top 5 NFL power rankings, I did want to spotlight, again, you and I love talking about our boy Cousins. The Vikings come back from 33-0 down against the Colts, I believe, last Saturday.
Beautiful history, slapping Jeff Saturday, which was an embarrassing hire. I'll say this for Kirk Cousins. He's better than the haters say, baby. He's better. You cannot. I've made this argument for years. I've never had a convincing rebuttal. How can you be as productive as Kirk Cousins for so long and not be any good? No one's ever said
what's
he's top
funny
5.
is, and I haven't looked it up. I need to do that. We always talk about how Dan Marino was such a great quarterback, and he was.
I love him.
But if I recall, Marino really didn't make the playoffs that often, nor he only went to one Super Bowl. So Cousins hasn't been to the Super Bowl. He's been to the playoffs a few times already. His stats are always there. You and I have talked about it at length when he was in Washington plus in Minnesota now. Am I going to consider him Tom Brady or Peyton Manning? No. But if I could almost put him up there with Tony Romo and some of these other guys who are consistent. And even though they might have bad games here and there, in the end, they're always playing consistently. There's a difference between playing at like this level and then playing around this level. So if we go for Kirk Cousins down to Jay Cutler,
right.
It's a big difference there because
It
Cutler
is.
was never consistent with his play.
And one thing that no one will ever give him credit for, because we like to rewrite history, some of those actually, I mean, fuck it. He played for the Washington Commanders. So he did nothing his rookie year, nothing his sophomore year. His third year, he threw 10 touchdowns and 9 picks. His 2015, when he gets the start, all he did was throw 29 touchdowns and 11 picks for 4,166 yards at almost 70% completion percentage. Like, I'm not going to go through all of his stats. They're really good. His stats this year are pretty good. It's a bit of a dip. Here's the thing, though, and this is where he also doesn't get credit. His line sucks. So for all the people who think you can just go bad offensive line, it's not on the quarterback, it's not on the coaches, it's blah, 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 blah. It's all about the offensive line. You have to square away not only his production on some bad teams, on a comically bad franchise, you also have to square away the fact that, yeah, he does have Justin Jefferson, and that's a bad man. That's a bad, bad man.
Well, the other thing is, like, people might say, well, he's got Dalvin Cook. And I'm like, well, Dalvin Cook misses a lot of time. So when he's not there, Cousins has to carry the load like he did in Washington.
They have to trade for a tight end. Like, I'm not saying that the Vikings roster is bad. I am saying that going into last week, they gave up more points than they had scored, and they won a lot of really close, tight games more than they should have. It's kind of like my TCU rant as well. However, to be fair to me, fuck TCU, and I love Kirk Cousins. So in this case, it actually works out well. But my love for Kirk Cousins, like, I used to be like, yeah, he's above average guy. His best year, he might crack 8. He might be the 8th best guy because he goes ham in an individual year. And he's going to be somewhere between 10 and 14. But he's going to be the guy who's always there while other guys fluctuate in and out and in and out. But given the fact that people hate him so much and never give him any credit for what he's done, including, I believe he won a playoff game in Washington, which they don't do that a whole lot, I might add. They're not like Cleveland bad, but they're not exactly like, I don't know, Kansas City good either.
Well, the thing is, I always got behind him because, Washington, when he started showing promise, Washington's like, well, we're not going to pay you, but we're going to franchise you. And they did this like a couple years in a row. And I thought that was like a big slap in the face. Like 1 year, okay, I get it. But then he kept doing it. And the guy was like, look, man, I mean, I'm playing my ass off here and you give me nothing. I want to get paid a little bit. I'm still in my fucking rookie contract.
Yeah. And I'm carrying this team.
Right. So then, like, finally, when he leaves, I'm like, good for him, man. Like, fuck Washington. They were idiots. And now look what they are. They haven't done anything since then. And yet, Cousins is still keeping Minnesota relevant. So kudos to him for doing that. And I'm glad that the other day he got a chance to say, hey, I can be a great NFL quarterback if you give me a chance. He proved it by coming back against the Colts. All right. Top 5. I just put mine together not too long ago because I forgot to do it. But looking through the list on NFL.com, I was like, okay. But then I just started reworking it. It's like, all right, I got mine. So number 5, who do you got?
I got the Niners. If Jimmy G was still there, I'd have them higher. I don't think Jimmy G's that great. I know Purdy's banged up as well. If he wasn't banged up, I might have had them higher. They have a defense that is just short of being historically good. They have one of the best head coaches in football. They have one of the best front offices in football. I always like to factor those things in as well as kind of like soft factors when I'm looking at these teams. Yeah, they play in the NFC, and yeah, they had a slow start, but here's the deal. I'm presuming Deebo Samuel is coming back healthy. Christian McCaffrey, knock on wood for him, stays healthy. That offensive line is great. That tight end, I always forget his name. Kittles, I want
Yeah.
to say.
Kittles and bits.
He's a monster when he's healthy, and they're one of those teams. If they make it healthy into the playoffs, they're horrifying. They have that nasty defense that kind of keeps them afloat when those guys aren't there. Obviously, they just traded for McCaffrey. If I'm the Niners and they can't go out and get a Brady and they can't really trade for a Rodgers because they have cap constraints. That's what happens when you have a lot of good players. But if I'm them, I'm looking at Trey Lance, and if he can just give me a solid season where he makes some plays here or there, they're Super Bowl contenders next season. And honestly, there's as much as I believe in the quarterback, outliers happen. They're Super Bowl contenders this year. I'm rooting for him too. I love Kyle. I love the Shanahans. I just fucking love the Shanahans.
Well, my number 5 will be a shocker, but I have some reasoning behind it, and that is the Buffalo Bills.
That's a good spot for him.
It's mainly just because injuries, man. Like, I think right now we talked about the line having some issues, but I think because of the defense not being as strong as it was at the early part of the season, Allen has had to try to carry his team offensively, and we've seen him make some mistakes with turnovers, trying to force stuff that normally he wouldn't do. And I still don't think there's much of a running game there. You and I have talked at length about this. Like, they still need a reliable running game. Singletary is a good back, but he's not somebody who's going to dominate a game.
They tried to get McCaffrey. They just felt like they couldn't give up.
And that would have been a world difference. We see with the Niners, he's like blowing it up.
Yeah.
All right. At number 4, who do you got?
If I might ask, who does NFL.com have at 5 and 4?
Let me pull it up real quick.
I'll tell you mine because mine is the Bills. I have them at 4, and I only have them at 4 off the strength of Josh Allen. I'm trying. I don't want to sound like I'm harsher on their roster than I am, but the whole Gabriel Davis hype, that shit is gone. He is so inconsistent, and he drops a lot of balls. Like, he's a good player. He's a game breaker, but he's also a poor man's Mike Wallace. And
okay, so the Chiefs were at number 5. The Bengals are at number 4.
Okay. That's my issue with their offense. Like, Stephon Diggs can't do everything. Their third wide receiver is solid. Their running back's nice, but he's not dynamic. He's kind of a I'll get you 4 yards, I'll catch you a pass here or there. He reminds me of Kevin Falk from the Patriots back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't need, with respect to Kevin Falk, who had a very long, productive career, they don't need a Kevin Falk. They need a true RB1. Their defense is good, but here's the problem. They lost Von Miller. They have other injuries. But even when they were healthy last season, the reason they went out and got Von is that defense chokes. I don't know if it's the players. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's bad luck. I don't know if it's Mahomes' magic. They kind of have some Baltimore Ravens in them on that defense where they're really good up until the end. And it's not like a Denver, not to pick on your boys, but it's not like a Denver situation where the defense has to do so much. That's a team with Josh Allen. Right. So I have them above the Niners because I think if those two teams played, the difference would be Josh Allen. And at the end of the day, am I really confident that the Bills are a lot better than the Niners? No. I think that they are moderately better.
Well, it's kind of like a tale of two stories. I mean, the Bills probably have a better offense than the Niners, but the Niners have a better defense than the Bills. And that's why at 4 I have the Niners. It's really kind of funny that you and I were switching them up like that. So, I don't know how far they can go with Purdy, but, one thing about young quarterbacks and guys like him is that he's got a lot of energy. He's more mobile than Jimmy G is. Trey probably would have been fine if he had stayed healthy, but, he's had the history of being hurt. I don't even know what they're going to do going forward because, I mean, how much time can you invest in this kid if he can't even stay on the field? That's the tough thing.
That's what they're saying about Trey.
Yeah,
I love Trey Lance too. That's not a dig. They're just snake bit.
Yeah,
like they have bad luck at that position.
It just reminds me a lot of Carson Palmer. Like you keep getting hurt at the wrong time, and it just sucked. Okay, who do you got at 3? And I see what I say. Number 3 here in the NFL was the Bills. So NFL.com has the Bills at 3.
I got the Eagles at 3.
Ooh, dropped them. Ooh,
I did. I love Jalen Hurts, and he did not have. I watched almost all the Eagles Bears game. I live in Illinois. It was on. I'm a fan of both quarterbacks. I watched as the Eagles and Hassan Reddick did their best to execute Justin Fields on the football field, make it the killing fields. There's all kinds of puns there.
That was a hell of a game, dude.
And he's Jalen. He's been good at throwing the ball. That was a horrible display in the first half. It got better in the second half, and he made it up with his legs.
Well, we talked about that a few weeks ago about when I had my concerns of whether or not Jalen can continue to play at the level he did when he started.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit when people got really giddy about Michael Vick when he came to the Eagles. He started out really hot. And I think it was Reed at the time, had him playing very well from the pocket, passing well, going through his reads. And then somewhere, I think it was right after the Chicago game when they lost, that Vic resorted back to some old habits. And then he never recovered after that. And that was the problem. So I'm curious about Jalen and whether or not he's going to continue to do it. I think he's going to be fine. I think he is going to be fine. But
he recovered well. One thing about him, and one of the reasons that's so endearing about him, he's so mentally tough. Like he got benched at Bama, and he said, "Fuck it, I'm good enough to be a Sooner. Bet you I do some shit there. Did some shit there. Was good enough to get drafted. He's gotten better every year. He played a shitty first half, and in the second half, credit to the Phillies coaching, they ran the ball more. Jalen made some nice throws, but he was really dynamic with his legs. But I have to be consistent. And if he had one of those games, like Patrick Mahomes does this too, he'll have a game where he throws 3 picks and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
And you're like,
and he still manages to win the game somehow.
Yeah, he somehow manages to win the game. And you're like, somehow I think he played well, but it doesn't make sense. But it's a combination of the plays that he made, the mistakes that he didn't make after he fucked up, leading the team to timely points. Yardage matters for just keeping your defense off the field, pressuring theirs, clutch, all that stuff. And Jalen Hurts, I'm not saying he's as good as Patrick Mahomes, but I am saying he does have that ability where it's almost like, oh, shucks, my stat line's not that great, but I still was kind of a fucking problem to deal with. But I do have to ding them. Another rationale is they're getting better against the run. They're getting gashed. They signed Linval and Ndamukong Suh. I don't recall if Jordan Davis is back yet. I'm still not convinced that they're good against the run. Right. And I've actually seen it's hard to stay at 11-0 pace, right? But I'm starting to see their defense isn't as good as it was. Now, granted, the year's gone on. They've had injuries and whatnot. You could easily put them at 1. But their teams I have ahead of them have a couple of things that matter to me more.
Well, before I get to my number 3, do you want to have some fun?
Yes. So
I play Madden, of course, on my downtime when I have time. And I what I do is I keep track of the years that, like I'll take a quarterback of any team, say, on the simulation, and I'll say, okay, I like this quarterback. He's young. I'm going to go ahead and give him the win for the team. And you can choose who wins each game each week. So I do that for a few seasons. Then by playoff time, of course, I play my Broncos, and I try to be fair about it as far as whether or not I'm good or bad. I will say for you, in 2027, the Steelers with Kenny Pickett do beat the Bears in the Super Bowl.
Makes sense.
Now you're gonna laugh at me for this because you're gonna be like, "You little fucker." So in 2037, I'm currently in 2038 right now, and I have a quarterback that I had, Stetson Bennett, that I've decided to trade to the Chiefs for a younger guy behind whoever was there. But because Mahomes retired already, but I picked up a free agent who is now my starter. Want to know who that is?
Oh, who is it?
Justin Fields, and he's lighting it the fuck up, dude. He's lighting it the fuck up. He's in his like 17th year or something. But I was being fair to him in the simulations. Like, I try to go by what they're doing currently. So even though like for 2022 this year, I had the Bills beating the Eagles in the Super Bowl, but of course that's assuming everybody's healthy, and that's whatever. But that's a little bit of fun. I thought, man, if Poetic can see me now picking up this kid and actually using him as my starter, he's like, "See, you're secretly a fan. You knew it."
No, but to be fair for the listeners and the watchers out there, Anubis doesn't hate Justin personally.
No,
he doesn't even. Like when he got drafted, there were people jumping out the window saying, "See, he's not even talented. He's not even a fourth rounder." You didn't say that either.
No,
you don't. You don't believe in Ohio State quarterbacks. You thought that some of the passing numbers that he put up in college were a little suspect, and you don't take the stance that a running quarterback can't do well.
Right.
You have questions about durability and longevity, which a lot of people.
Well, the biggest thing I have
not
is
like you hate Justin Fields and you want him to.
I like that he can escape the pocket. He's a great runner, obviously. Same Lamar. Lamar's the same way, but I just want them to prove to me that you can be a passer first, runner second. That doesn't mean they don't look to pass first. They both do. That's what they're taught, which is good. That's what your coach needs to do. But do you remember like when Donovan McNabb was at Syracuse? Like, he did a lot of running there and passing. Yeah. But when he got to Philly, like, Reed forced him to be a pocket guy until he can run out, with his athleticism.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be taught to these guys. Like, I hear so much going on in Baltimore right now. They're all like, "Oh, they're just holding Lamar back, no, they're trying to make him a better fucking player."
And here's the thing with Lamar. He can be a good passer. For him, it's a consistency. There were people who said, "Oh, he'll never be able to be a good passer." Right. That's gone.
Yeah,
that's absolutely gone.
He had to pull up the game against Miami a couple years ago.
He was throwing darts. Like, it's part of it is he's a hot and cold rhythm passer, and you can deal with that because that's what Carson Palmer was. And that was not a mobile man, especially after that knee injury.
Right.
That guy, he had a lot of Drew Bledsoe in him, And for anyone who doesn't know who Drew Bledsoe is, go to your town square, look at a statue. That's Drew Bledsoe. Statue probably can't throw bombs like old Drew did. Drew was nasty, but McNabb's credit, he was always one of my guys because even way back then, his splits for deep ball passing were insanely good. Part of that is, I'm an Andy Reid offense, so get fucked. Part of it was McNabb was good enough to be a top 10 fucking draft pick. I don't care what.
Well, he proved everybody wrong. I mean, they booed him when he was and I'm like, eventually he did become a very good passer. Like, that was impressive. He went to a Super Bowl. He lost to the Patriots, but you can.
Everyone else did too.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I mean, he did prove people wrong. He did what he was supposed to do when he was drafted. I'm happy for him for that. Really am.
Yeah.
All right. So my number 3 is the Chiefs. But the only reason why I begrudgingly put them there because I do feel they're better than the Niners and Bills at this time. But I feel like they're a team without an identity. Like, they really don't have a good wide receiver core, even though there's some speed there. Schuster's really not blowing anything up outside getting himself blown up. I see him take some hits. Their running game is still kind of like, I don't know where it is. It's coming and going. Defensively, it's coming and going. So, other than Mahomes carrying them, I don't really know how good or bad they're really going to be down the stretch. But with Mahomes, he's always going to have you in the game. It doesn't matter. So that's
Yeah.
who I have at number 3.
Their identity. I was actually thinking about the same thing too. I think that if I were a Chiefs fan and I wanted to sell you on an identity, my identity is that you don't have a toy to take away except for Travis Kelce, and historically, no one's taken him away, right? So, um, MVS gets open from time to time. Juju gets open from time to time. Kadrius Toney gets open from time to time. His biggest issues are injuries. Really, what I could probably have, and I think this will happen. There's going to be a playoff game where one of those 3 guys has like 150 yards, and they look like world beaters. And then the next game, that guy is going to have 40 yards. Maybe he has a touchdown because of scheming or not, or whatever. And then somebody else is going to have like 80 or 90 yards, and then the other guy is going to fall somewhere between the two of them. They're all kind of that same caliber of guy.
Right.
And that's what they're really going to do. Like, I have Kelce in the middle of the field. That's a problem. And then I have all this speed. And, so, they have other things than speed. Like, Juju can go over the middle. He's tough as fuck. Like, toughness will never be something that he lacks.
I think doesn't he have like a bit of a reputation of kind of like taking plays off and stuff?
He has the TikTok reputation, and he's kind of and I say this lovingly because he's a good guy.
Right.
He's kind of a turd. But he is. I don't know if you've seen the clip where Vontaze Burfict gets blown up by the wide receiver. That's Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah.
He's also got some dog in him. He just needs to be focused. But I mean, he's a. I feel like he's kind of underachieved a little bit, but he's a good dude, and I would not be surprised to see him have some big moments in the postseason.
Well, the NFL.com power rankings have the Niners at number 2. Who do you got?
I have the Bengals.
It sounded so depressed when he said that.
Division rival. All right, you want a hot take?
Here we go.
Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in football.
I'm not going to argue that.
I believe he's one of the most. I believe I know people don't care about.
Do you think though? And it's. I know it's kind of a catch-22 here because of where he's playing, but do you think he's better than Hopkins?
Yes.
Okay.
I think he's.
I'd probably agree at this point. I mean, but I feel bad for DeAndre when he first got to Arizona. I was like, it seemed like it was going to be a great matchup.
And it was.
But
and then
all of a
he
sudden,
got hurt, and Kyler Murray is. There's a lot of stuff swirling about Kyler and who he is and who he isn't.
right.
They also don't have a very good head coach. Hopkins has been banged up. I mean, he also cheated.
So you think Kingsbury's jumped a shark?
I think that he should be very happy that he was in the water in the first place. I thought Kingsbury absolutely sucks. I thought it was hilarious that he got hired. And at the end of the day, this doesn't surprise anybody. But for Jamar Chase, the only guy I think who has an argument to be better than him right now is Justin Jefferson. And so let me make that make sense for a second. I'm not saying Cooper Kupp, when he comes back, isn't going to be a beast. I'm saying that he's older, he's banged up, he plays a physical position, and Matt Stafford might have taken his last snap.
Actually, I think I like your points. I think, Cooper, he doesn't make those crazy one-hand catches and stuff. When he gets the ball, he does crazy shit with it.
He makes acrobatic body control catches. He's not doing the OBJ stuff.
Right. So Jefferson and Chase, they have ways of making plays that you just can't believe are being made. That's sort of the difference there. And I think I agree.
They're different sizes, but they got some Randy Moss in them. And Chase, he only runs a 4.4, but his route running is godly. His acceleration is insane. His body control is amazing. His route running, his hands. If you watch him play against zone, he's so smart and he knows where the holes are. You cannot cover him. I'm not trying to take away from corners today, but there ain't no one who can guard him a whole game one-on-one, at least with these rules. And I hate to say it, I will take him over Justin Jefferson because Justin Jefferson is really the only good wideout on that team. I think that there's some volume difference. And I get it. There are some people who don't even have Chase in their top 5 yet.
That's
and I
wrong.
also I think it's wrong, but you could say Devontae, Cooper Kupp, Jefferson, Stephon Diggs.
See, the funny thing though is Devontae has become almost invisible. I remember when Randy Moss went to the Raiders and he did nothing.
Yeah, his numbers are nuts though.
So have your quarterback is part of the problem there and part of the equation. So,
yeah, but that's the thing though. Like Devontae's numbers this season he's got 12 touchdowns, almost 1,300 yards, and 86 catches. The Raiders are just that bad. The Raiders are just that bad.
I didn't think his numbers were even that big. That's
good, his numbers are. He's having a historically great year for a wide receiver going over to a new team. It just doesn't matter because they're the fucking Raiders and they're like Josh McDaniels that's a good fucking idea. So but to get back to the Bengals, so you have Jamar Chase, who I think is at minimum a top 3 wideout, but a lot of smart people smarter than me would disagree with that. Okay, but he's in that mix. He's at minimum in that top 5 mix. You have T. Higgins, who's a number 1. T. Higgins is Anquan Bolden's son. I'm just fucking convinced of it. And then you have Tyler Boyd, who's a number 2 wideout, who is their number 3 wideout.
I love that trio. In fact, I feel bad. I feel bad a little bit for Higgins because it's kind of like Pickens for me. It's like they should be Burr should be looking at Higgins a little more than he is. Because go ahead.
I feel bad for Boyd because he's the slot guy. And he's like, I'm supposed to get 90 catches. I'm the slot guy.
Right.
But but then they have Joe Mixon, who's an above average back. Their offensive line if you look at the past 5 or 6 weeks, they're above average. So they're at least trending in the right way. And then I have to say this, and I hate to say this, but if somebody is making a top 5 quarterback list and Joe Burrow isn't in it, you need to light that list on fire and do that. Okay? If Joe Burrow is not 3rd or higher, your list is wrong. I could make the argument. I don't believe this, but there is a valid argument that Joe Burrow is better than Josh Allen. I do not subscribe to that argument. But
I would. Because
it's a pretty fucking good argument.
Josh can do a lot more things than Joe can, but
yes,
Joe has already proven he can take a team to the Super Bowl. Like, I did not expect him to go into KC last year and win. I did not expect it. And you kind of expected them to kind of get crushed by the Rams, but they didn't. And, look, I know that Super Bowls don't count for everything, but Josh had a moment. He could have won last year in KC and didn't get it done. Not all his fault because his defense imploded.
13 seconds or whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not him really, but I'm just saying that it's hard to knock Joe because Joe's already done what Josh hasn't yet. It's kind of weird.
And here's the other thing for Joe Burrow. All right, to put this in perspective, when that leg injury happened, and we're not going to get into the details because it's nasty. When that leg injury happened, there was real concern his career was done.
Yeah.
Like, he was going to obviously come back, but he wasn't going to be – because he was good enough. Like, he got taken first overall because he has a pretty good arm. It's not great. He's fairly mobile, but he was the total package, and he performed so highly at college, and the tangibles were through the roof. He's not a top 5 quarterback in terms of raw talent. He's not close to it, right? So what does that leg injury take away from him? So he comes back from that, and he plays in a big play offense, completing over 70% of his passes for a bunch of yards, a bunch of touchdowns. He doesn't give a fuck. He's not scared of anybody. As a Steelers fan, like, we're used to seeing the Bengals come into town and being scared to playoffs. Mm-hmm. They're not.
Right.
They have more issues with Cleveland than us.
And they seem to get better as it goes on. Now, this is
Right.
the funny thing
and so with him, so if he can say with a straight face, I'm arguably the best pure passer in football, and you can make that argument. And then you follow that up again with a line that's getting better, but that was a shit line for most of this year, at least the first 2/3 of this point of the season.
I think if we would have gone back to the first 4 weeks, we'd have thought they probably would have missed the playoffs this year.
I had them. I thought that they were going to hit a wild card because wide receivers matter, and they got 3 of them. That defense, they got 2 pass rushers and some dogs in the second.
I was just worried that they were going to get off too much of a slow start.
And then they look like they're building for next year.
Right.
Absolutely. But that's the thing. So with Burrow, I have 2 monster seasons. He's playing his way into the MVP conversation. He's taking the Bengals are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. That is not something that you hear outside of video games. He owns Patrick Mahomes. Like, let's be honest. When they play the Bills, I think it's next week on Monday Night Football. It's either Sunday night or Monday Night Football. Why would anyone pick the Bills to beat them? I mean, the Bills have a slightly better defense, at least theoretically. We'll see that the Bengals have some injuries for their own pass rushers. We'll see how that plays out. Stephon Diggs and Jamar Chase cancel one another out. That's completely fine. You can definitely argue Diggs is better than Chase. That is a sane argument.
Boyd and Higgins.
Yeah, exactly. I know that the Bengals' third wideout, Boyd, is better than the Bills' second and third wide receiver. I know Mixon's better than their running back. I know that the Bills have a better offensive line, and I know that Josh Allen is Superman and Burrow's the best pure passer in football.
I love that pick by you. I think that's a great pick, and it's funny because for me, the Bengals are still Jekyll and Hyde right now. So they are at number 6 for me right now, even though that probably will change as they keep winning. So my number 2 pick is going to shock everybody. It's the Lions. I'm kidding. It's not the Lions.
It's not the fucking Lions. We already did this, Anubis. We did this.
It's the Vikings.
Ooh,
the Heart Attack
spicy.
Kids. The Heart Attack Kids. I really like the Vikings right now. It's just one of those things. Like, I'm not going to start making predictions because I'm always waiting for that ball to drop with Cousins and company because they always kind of build, and then it's like, and then that's what happens. But this year seems a little different. They seem to be taking on a lot of adversity in games. We just saw them. We talked about how they came back against the Colts. I mean, dude, who the hell sees that coming? Like, it just seems like a different vibe and feel. And they all seem to be believing in one another, which is something we like to talk about a lot, which is important.
They're putting the chain up. Kirk Cousins wearing those chains is the best thing ever.
He probably stole from Talib.
And no one steals from Talib. He borrowed them from Talib, who borrowed them from Crabtree. I loved Mike Zimmer as a head coach. He did a lot of good things. He and Cousins did not mesh. They hated one another. It's hard to win games when your head coach and your quarterback hate one another. To me, I would push back on that. I love that pick because at this point, fuck it. Hashtag Kirk Cousins, baby. Like I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. I like point differential. I'm skeptical of a team that's given up more points than they've scored. Here's the thing with the Vikings, though. Their record is their record. They play in the NFC. The NFC is lousy. It wasn't that long ago that we saw the AFC take a downturn as well. And on top of that, they are beating teams in their division that have historically been tough for them. And they have Justin Jefferson. So when you have a wide receiver who represents the Mike Tyson punch, the I could be losing, and then bam, it doesn't matter. And you have Cook, who's good when he's healthy. They got Hawkinson. The defense is a disappointment, and the line is bad. but they're good enough. Anyone can beat anyone in the NFL. We get it. So you throw that out because that just goes without being said. But they are good enough to be a tough out. I think that with them, the real test is going to be, what does Adam Thielen have left? Can he get back to some of that red zone? That guy used to dominate. He used to just be a stud, but he used to dominate the red zone. And if they
He used to be
some,
almost also used to like Cooper Cup in some ways. Like he's somebody you can really rely on.
And he made fucking Keenum. He and Diggs made Keenum a lot of money. He then stole from the Broncos.
Everyone steals from us. Look at Russell; he's stealing from us too.
You let Flacco steal from you.
I know. What the hell, dude? Like it's almost like we're the Browns or something.
I'm not. I can't. I love you too much.
Yeah. So I think it's all going to come down to, can they continue to be opportunistic and take advantage of stuff? Like you watched that Buffalo game they had. Like that really was a game that could have went either way, but they stuck with it.
Both teams fucked up, but it was entertaining.
Right. But see, they find ways to win, and sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah.
And now that's the only question going forward, because their defense does give up a lot of points, and that could be a problem against better quality teams. So can they get by a team like the Eagles or Niners? We'll see. But they're fun to root for. I really like it. You and I are Cousins fans, so we're hoping that the best for him, obviously.
Do you remember when we were just like, yo, he doesn't suck. He's probably a top 10, top 12 guy. Like, let's calm down. And then the hate towards him got so intense. We're like, fuck it. We ride for Kirk Cousins. Like,
right.
I'm throwing the cape on for Kirk.
So NFL power rankings have the Eagles at number 1. Who do you got?
I got the Chiefs. It's a boring pick. Here's the pick. Here's the rationale for the pick. They have the best quarterback in football, in my opinion. They have the best head coach, and I have to walk back I got too hyped up. I was like, Sean McVay's the best head coach in football right now. Top 5. I believe in him. I got a little too hype. I have to admit that I was wrong. I wasn't even drunk. I got hype. They have the best head coach in football. Andy Reid has some warts that goes along with him, but he's probably the best head coach in football. Their defense has pass rushers. They were playing above their ability for a while, and now they're playing below their ability right now. I think their defense is marginally above average in totality, so I think that will even out. And then they have an offense that's just hard to figure out. It used to be like Kelsey and Tyreek Hill used to beat the fuck out of people, and it was horrifying to play against. But you at least knew who was going to beat you. Now it's hard to know who's going to beat you. And the bitch of it is, when you play them on offense, that Mahomes' magic is real. The guy's a warrior. He's accountable. He's a leader. He's all the intangible things that Jaded hates. Shout out to Jaded. We love you, you anti-nerd. Because you hate.
Oh, he's a big nerd. He's a big.
He actually is a big. Jaded is one of the best guys you could ever meet, and I love the shit out of that guy. He's a good friend, a good football fan. He has all those intangibles that Jaded fucking hates, which makes no mistakes because he's a huge John Elway fan, and John had all of those intangibles. They're just tough. Are they Super Bowl favorites? Like you can pick them, and I guess that would make them a favorite. You know, maybe Vegas has them.
I think any team that we talk about in the top 5
could be viewed as a favorite.
Yeah,
they feel less dominant than they did last year, but they're also a cocky team, and they let that get ahead of them. Now they still turn the ball over too much. They still are starting 4 youngsters in the secondary. They still have Andy Reid as a head coach, and he does some weird shit in the playoffs.
Well, let's not forget, though, they got the best player on that team. That's Juan Thornhill out of Virginia in the defensive back.
That's right. That's right. They call him Baby Peyton because he's that guy. He's just I could have put the Chiefs at 2, at 3. I wasn't going to put them any lower than 3. But I think ultimately what makes me think that they're the best team, aside from the fact that the Bengals are their boogeyman, I don't see anyone else beating them in the playoffs, at least out of the AFC. Now, if they play the Bengals, I'm betting the Bengals. And I'll fucking want to.
Well, my number one has not changed. I still have the Eagles. We talked at the very beginning of all this that I wasn't sure if the Eagles were for real. They continue to win. They continue to win pretty impressively. Like I said, it's all going to hinge if Hurts can stay at playing at that high level. And if he does, that team can go to distance. They've got everything you want. They can run the ball. They can pass. They got good defense, at least good enough defense.
Their pass rushes.
They're in a conference where, as you brought up, is kind of weak compared to the AFC. So, like, you would think this year Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady would have been the biggest threat to anybody, and they're not. Neither one of those teams are relevant right now. And outside of the Vikings and Niners, and the Niners have the QB issue, what is it? There's just no one there.
Are you out on the Cowboys?
I like the Cowboys, but then I don't like the Cowboys. I mean, look, I was happy as a clown that Jacksonville came back because I'm a big Trevor Lawrence fan.
Yeah,
but that's a major collapse, man. Those are the games that we've been talking about for the last 5 years. And it's not just Dak's fault. It's the team philosophy. Whatever's going on there, they just can't put together for a full.
They
game.
have had 2 weak head coaches. Jason Garrett is a weak head coach. Maybe he was only weak because Jerry Jones.
Right.
Mike McCarthy, once upon a time, was a very good head coach. Now he just exudes weakness. Like, if you look at what he was saying, the refs are the reason why we lost again. It's like, no, bro, the Niners came in and beat the fuck out of you. Then they shit the bed and put you back in it. And, yeah, it would have been nice if that ref was hustling. But if I have to stand up there and say that the ref had too much of a donk to get out of my center's way so I could snap the ball to maybe get one more playoff or whatever that situation was.
Or don't put yourself in that position. If you, like, Dallas at times have been up by a couple of scores on teams and they can't hold it.
They can't. And Micah Parsons, who I thought was the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year, he's had some off games, at least pass rushing wise. And let's be honest, he's good in coverage when they have him cover. He's a monster against the run. But you win MVPs and DPOYs based off of stats. It's stats and highlights. I'm not saying that that's right. I'm not saying that it even makes sense. I'm just saying that's what we fucking do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so right now it feels like it's Bosa's award because he's just destroying everything in San Francisco. But I only ask about Dallas because it wouldn't be a huge shocker if they made a deep run in the postseason because their offensive line's a lot better than people thought. The running back tandem's pretty good. CeeDee Lamb's good. Dak is never awful. Sometimes he's great. You know, he's a playmaker. And that defense is Jekyll and Hyde. So I only ask about them because do you at least give them a puncher's chance?
I will if they focus on running the ball. Pollard and frickin' Ezekiel Elliott, when those guys are running, nobody can stop them. And it's like, whatever happens, something happens. It's not necessarily that they abandon it, but it's got to be the coaching, man. Like, it's like McDaniels. McDaniels looks good for about 3 quarters this year. And then he gets into the 4th quarter and shit falls apart. And I don't know what's going on, but it seems McCarthy's the same way. The Cowboys look fantastic for like most of the game, and then like they just fall apart. And I don't know what the story is there. Like they, as you said, they got the talent to do it, but they've always had the talent to do it.
They've been like they didn't have the talent.
And last 4 years, they've been like favorites to come out of the NFC, and like they can't do it. And
yeah, I remember when they were supposed to beat the Rams in the NFC Championship game, and then the Rams went on to lose sadly to the Patriots, right?
Yeah.
And the Cowboys do get overhyped, and Jerry is a salesman, and ESPN they hype them up, and there's a way in which the Cowboys subsidize the NFL. I get that, but there are times where it's like you can't even win a playoff game, and I only bring them up because like I don't have any hate against Dallas. Like I love Deion Sanders. I think I argue tooth and nail that Emmitt Smith is underrated because
I grew up a Dallas fan, dude. Before Denver, I was a Dallas fan.
Exactly. They're one of those franchises. They're very important to the NFL. So I don't have any hate towards them, but they are amusingly bad. And that they, everyone has like a 6 and 10 year whatever fucking happens, right? But god damn, they should. I think if they played the Eagles in the postseason, who knows? Because that's a divisional game as well. It hurts.
So last year they lost to the Niners at home.
I know, and I know that game lived up to the hype, but for bad reasons.
Right.
The Cowboys and the Niners playing is supposed to feel like it did in the 90s. That shit was epic. That was the Super Bowl. That was the
But I'm
Super Bowl.
like, dude, this is your chance to prove you belong, and you just let Jimmy G come in and like the whole team just abuse you. I mean,
Samuel, and then Jimmy G put them back in the game because that's what Jimmy G does.
Yeah.
But I just found them interesting to see where, because I still give them a puncher's chance against anybody, but they're not a Super Bowl contending team.
You never know, but like I said, until they get some of those other issues worked out, like I don't know. Do I think they have enough heart like the Vikings? No. Do I think they have enough chemistry and motivation like the Eagles? I'm just not sure if they've got that. Like Dak might have it, but I'm just not sure about everybody else on the team.
They beat the crap out of the Vikings. If they played in the postseason, would you pick Minnesota?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now I would, because I think right now it's mental with Dallas. It's mental. And
well, I know damn well
if Dallas hosts, like they wouldn't host. I don't think they could host a home game unless it was a wild card. But if the Minnesota to come into Dallas in the wild card game, I think Dallas would be terrified to play them. I just think they'd be looking last year like, oh my god, we can't let this happen again. Because I think teams sometimes it becomes a mental factor for them, and I think that Minnesota's like, okay, well they're not even giving us a fucking chance. They haven't been giving us a chance all year. We're just going to come in and do our thing.
I think that the only team that they feel like they could be would be Tampa, and Tampa is its own weird paradox because they're bad. They are bad at football, but you still don't want to play them because they have Tom Brady. But Tom Brady this year is also bad at football, so I feel like the Bucs are either going to flame out horribly.
If you're going to beat the Bucs, you gotta punt away early. I mean, really away. It can't be like just 2 touchdowns. You gotta,
unless you're the Bengals, because then you're just like, fuck it, I'll just keep throwing to my wide receivers. I don't give a shit.
Right.
But they don't have that type of talent.
No, not anymore. I mean, they have guys, but like this.
Yeah,
Brady's done. He's done. He's got some left in there, and he looks good at times. But there's no way I don't think he's gonna beat Dallas.
Probably not.
All right, so we're gonna get into our college football playoff because it's now set, and we're gonna kind of make it quicker. But I'm gonna do 2 things. We're gonna make our picks of who wins, but I'm gonna ask you a question first regarding both matchups.
Yeah.
So I'll do both of them, and then you can answer them. Do they have a chance to beat the other team? So in this case, does TCU have a chance to beat Michigan, and does Ohio State have a chance to beat Georgia? Go.
So aside from it's football and anything can happen, I'll do the Georgia game first. Ohio State has a chance because they have a great, at least for college, quarterback. I understand that one of their best wide receivers is sitting out, which really hurts their case. But when you have that type of connection and a talented defense, you have to give them that puncher's chance that I've been talking about in a couple of different contexts. I am, however, heavily betting Georgia. Aside from TCU versus Michigan, aside from the puncher's chance, TCU is going to get killed. TCU TCU is going to get.
It pains him so much to say this.
TCU is going to get bitch slapped. I don't know. I don't know if the score is going to be 56-10. I don't know if it's going to be 28-17 and they get a pity touchdown at the end and Michigan, it's just one of those ass beatings where the score doesn't represent the type of beating that they get. I don't know if it's going to be 28 or 31-14 and the game's never in jeopardy. TCU is not a real number 4 team. Some seasons you do not have 4 playoff caliber teams. And one of the reasons why I was not high on TCU is because of this scenario. The Wolverines have a better coach. Now, Harbaugh is a stud, so that's not even a dig at TCU's head coach. Although I will remind the listeners that most of America could not tell you, I'm talking about college football fans, the name of TCU's head coach. They are just better, absolutely better. And it would have, because TCU got lucky in so many games because they came out on the right end of a bunch of close games. They earned their way in here. They're going to get.
Don't you think that's like shows resolve though?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. I'm not questioning that team's toughness. I'm not questioning that team's heart. I'm not even saying that they're lacking in talent. I'm just saying that college football, maybe it's getting better with the NIL, the transfer portal stuff, and I hope that it's the case. But right now, the 4 or 5 biggest programs have a chokehold on the top recruits every single year. Now, NIL's changing it.
Real quickly,
yeah.
Instead of TCU, who would you like to see in their position? Because
I would have put Bama in.
Really? Wasn't Bama like 7th?
I think they ended up at 5th or 6th.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, USC lost, but here's the thing: if let's say USC didn't lose, they beat Utah and they came in, UCU would get absolutely positively killed by Michigan. Like Michigan is legitimately, like I think that you have Georgia up here, and then you have Michigan here, and then everybody else is there or lower.
Do you think that LSU or Tennessee would have did well in here, top 4?
Presuming, let's say that Tennessee made it and Hendon Hooker didn't get hurt.
I forget about that. Yeah, so forget Tennessee. I forgot that Hooker went down.
LSU's, if for sake of argument, let's say it's good LSU. Not whoopsies, we forgot to play fucking because they have consistency issues. They would have been interesting because their talent is so insane, and I'm preemptively picking them to win the national championship next year. I still think that they would have probably gotten dog slapped by Michigan, but they would have, I guess, more than a puncher's chance. I think that it's going to be Michigan versus Georgia. I would pick Georgia to win, but I'm actually rooting for Michigan to win because I think that Harbaugh is really, really underrated. That people have not given that man his due. And I get it; he brings it on himself. He's an asshole. He has as much charisma. He has as much charisma as a snake bite, as much charisma as a shotgun wound.
He's like the Bill Belichick of college football.
He's except worse because Bill Belichick is at least funny with dry humor. Harbaugh, he communicates in screaming and shouting. And I would typically make a joke about him like stroking out or whatnot. I'm not because of R.I.P. Mike Leach, and things like that. But like Jim Harbaugh, like a normal person like goes to McDonald's and they're like, hey, I'd like a number 1 with a regular Coke or whatever. He orders like, I want a number 1 with a regular Coke. Like the man has and his brother is like the chillest dude in the world.
Right.
I can't even imagine. He's a stud though.
I agree with you. I think in the end it's going to be Michigan and Georgia. In my heart, I would like to see TCU and Ohio State.
Only because you hate me.
For those that haven't been following us, I've been poking the bear with Poet for a while now because I had TCU ranked number 1 a few weeks back at the top of the chart. He couldn't stand it. He's like, no. But really, okay, well, let's just shit and giggles here. Do you think TCU would stand a chance against Ohio State? Or do you still think it'd be a blowout? because I think this is one of the weaker Ohio State teams I've seen, and I say that lightly because obviously they're good. But you said yes. You think they would?
Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
They absolutely would because the wide receiver's out.
Yeah,
That he's just sitting, and I get it. It's a business decision. If that wide receiver was playing, I mean, so much of their offense is the quarterback and those two wideouts. So and I can't even say, oh, it's bullshit to say yes because that wideout's not playing. Star players sit out bowl games all the time now.
right.
Like like it feels like that's a 50-50 chance. So
I kind of hate that, but I understand it. You know what I mean? I just hate it.
I respect it because it's you got.
Well, it's your future. I mean, you got.
Listen, if I was a first round draft pick, my mom's getting a house.
Yeah, because I mean, the worst thing is, I'm glad that Willis McGahee had a career, but that shot that he took in the national championship game and broke his leg was. It cost him. It cost him in the long run.
Remember the running back from South Carolina who was going to be the #1 pick, and he ended up falling to like the 3rd or 4th round. And the Niners drafted him because they were going to pair him with Frank Gore and thought that he could teach him from that type of shit. And it didn't work out either. Like it's just it's too much of a risk, man. And I hate it, and it feels wrong. But mom's getting a house. Mom's getting a house.
Mom's getting a house.
Mom's getting a fucking house.
So you think you want Michigan to win, but you think Georgia's going to win it?
Yeah.
Same here. Okay. So we're on the same page with that. I think Georgia just happens to be kind of like classic Bama here. I mean, they are a strong team. I think it's going to be closer than people think. I think Michigan has proven this year that they can go anywhere and play with anybody.
Real quick, I want to say this. Now, if TCU wins or it's a close game, we will open the next show with me admitting that not just that I was wrong, but the specificities of my incorrectness. Because on this show, we're accountable.
It's on record here, folks.
It's on record. But you can attest to this. I've always been that guy.
If that day of that game, guess who's going to be texting Poet all day? Look, motherfucker. Now, granted, if Michigan goes out there and whoops that ass, I'm going to have to deal with a lot of shit coming my way. So I'm going
to save it up for the next show. We're doing a 40-minute piece on college football. Don't worry, you'll be talking for 30 minutes about it. I'll just ask you questions. But I've always admitted when I'm wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Not when other people think that they've proven me wrong, but when I'm actually wrong. It's
not even like so much like it's not even like I do expect Michigan to win. I know how good Michigan is, but I always find like a team here and there that I'm like, oh, I really want to pull for these guys, and they seem to be doing okay. And TCU has played a lot of ranked teams this year. Now, granted, they were on a lower scale, and they had some tough games, but I think that's how you tell a team is really driven with the resolve. Now, whether or not they can hang with Michigan, we'll find out. Well, but I like the fact that they get a chance to do it because look,
they do, they get it. And
Bama could have solved their own problems by winning the games they should have.
If Bama doesn't
probably would have been there, except for Hooker got hurt.
Yeah,
LSU did their own damage. So I mean, these teams, Bama can't bitch. I mean, you didn't win the games you were supposed to.
The only complaint that Bama can have, and I think I think it's a valid complaint, but it's just, some arguments can be true, but they're just not as strong as others. They are getting heavily punished for losing to a team that beat them on a walk-off 2-point conversion that shot up the rankings after beating Bama. Wait, hold on. So they barely beat us. They have to go for a gimmicky win. They beat us, and now all of a sudden they're legit because they beat us. But we're not that great. There is some inconsistency there. But to be fair, if they beat LSU in the same way, then they're in right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think because Bama is clout. Like, I don't care who you are. Do you remember a few years ago, Appalachian State beating Michigan?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Appalachian State, I think they maybe were top 25, but lower end. Maybe for like a couple weeks, but that gave them clout. Like that said, oh shit.
Yeah.
These
They
guys
had a big win this season too. I can't remember who they beat, but then they lost to someone silly. But that's, I mean, one of my favorite Jim Rome things is when he was ranting, stop scheduling Apple. He's like, these fucking kids aren't good enough to play at your school by a thin margin. And when they get enough of those kids, because they don't graduate early or whatever, they have a surprisingly strong team. And when your team goes in there and they're not trying, and this is Appalachian State's fucking Super Bowl, and they get the ball to bounce their way a couple fucking times, this is what happens. Stop scheduling them. Schedule Citadel. I don't know why Citadel caught a stray or someone.
Was it Bethman and Cook?
Yeah, it just is what it is. Now, I will say this too for TCU as well. If one or two of those really narrow wins weren't quite so narrow, I wouldn't have had any issue. But it's just like, to me, the argument that I'm making against them is the same logic that I'm using against the Vikings being in the top 5. I am being consistent, and the only real reason why I have so much animus towards TCU, it's because I don't watch a ton of sports shows because they're garbage now. But I'll throw on, I like Joel Klatt, and I'll throw on something, and he's pretty good. But now, like, because they have to pimp them to generate ratings or whatever, when I hear if you think about it, TCU, the difference in their talent in Michigan and Georgia is not really all that much. And I'm like, I want to fuck, my liver wants to shut off when I hear that shit, because it's just not fucking true. And it just is what it is. They needed that stupid field goal with no timeout to beat an unranked team. And I get it. I will say this as well. I don't have an issue with Alabama having clout and having the benefit of the doubt. I think that makes sense. And I know that people are like, well, but that's not fair. It's supposed to be based off of what you do each season. I don't think it is. I think that at a certain point in time, like when everybody 5, 6, 7 years ago was betting on Tom Brady to bomb out, I was like, you know what? I'm going to bet on him to bomb out when he actually fucking does it. The same things 10 years ago when the Steelers got a little shaky. You know, people were saying, oh, it's the end of the Steelers. And then, nope, they went on to make several more deep playoff runs. Like, there's something to be said about players and teams and brands who are always fucking there. And you can say, well, that's past stuff that they've done, but that's also who they are now. Yeah. And that, to me, I put a lot of emphasis on that because I've been proven right, for as much as you can be proven right on predictions, based off of that type of logic. Not everybody fucking does, and I get that too. But TCU's love is just and you didn't help either, asshole.
All right, well, with our remaining time, we're going to get to our last topic. It's about the World Cup. It was probably one of the best World Cups I've seen in a long time, just in terms of competition, how exciting it was. And in the end, it was kind of nice to see this guy finally get a World Cup win. That's Lionel Messi from Argentina. So congrats to them. What did you think? Did you watch any of it outside of Tunisia? Because I know you like that loser team, that TCU team.
Whoa, that is the team of my father. And they beat a team, France, who colonized them. And they went 1-1-1, and they didn't get to advance because of the same bias that I'm okay with being used against TCU. But it's not okay for Tunisia. Why? Fuck you. That's why. That's why. Damn it.
It was tough for me. I'm a Germany fan, so we didn't get out of the bracket either.
I root for the USA and Tunisia. Like and after that, I'll root for a story or whatever. I didn't watch a lot of it. I'm not gonna lie and act like I did. I'm more interested. The storyline that got me interested in it the most was Messi and if he's actually the GOAT. I find that stuff interesting. Mm-hmm. I think that it was obviously exciting. It obviously the World Cup. It's to Americans. It's so interesting to us because we only care about soccer every 4 years or so, right?
That's me.
And so it's very novel. But it's also interesting for us to get outside of our bubble where football is king to see that the other football is king. across the globe. What I will say for this World Cup in terms of excitement is that when you watch so many people latch on to Messi for whatever reason, we love him, we hate him. I just like to see him win. I don't want to see him win because I'm a Ronaldo fan or a Pele fan or whatever it is. It made me. It got the same feeling from them that we kind of give off, like with the Manning, Brady, or the LeBron, Jordan, and and that type of stuff. So that's interesting to observe that sports fans are sports fans in just different contexts.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of negative things over the years with soccer because of how violent sometimes it can get, like just in the regular leagues and fans getting out of control. But you also see, especially during the World Cup, how passionate they are. They're in tears or they're happy. And, again, yeah, the question about Messi being maybe the greatest or Ronaldo, which was interesting because watching Portugal in their last two games of the tournament, Cristiano Ronaldo was actually benched, and he came out in the second half of both those games. The first one, they really did a good job of scoring. I think they scored like 6 goals or 5 before he came in and got another one for himself. But then in the last game that they lost, he came off the bench and didn't really do much, and they ended up losing that game. But I thought the interesting thing about Ronaldo is he was playing for, I think, the United, and then
yeah, that's my team.
Yeah, he had some problems, I guess, with people there. And
yes, he did.
And so now he's going to be playing for Saudi Arabia or something, and he's getting paid like $200 million or something to play a year. It's nuts. I couldn't believe the contract they said that what he had. I was like, wow. But I guess that's kind of the way it is when there's not as many high-profile players. Although I will say Mbappe from France is amazing. That dude, he actually impressed the shit out of me against Argentina. But the other thing that came about when, I just posted about who won, congrats to Argentina on Facebook and whatnot. And I had a friend who is from Portugal. He lives in Brazil now, I think. He was really angry, not so much at Argentina, but he's angry about FIFA and the apparent corruption that resides within it. Now, the question I'm going to pose to you, this is something we've heard with the NFL as well, in terms of like, are things fixed? Do we think this is going to be happening? But I think my biggest argument against stuff like that is, in order to have something, so in order to sit there and say, we think Argentina is going to win, or they're going to be set to win because that's how they want it. But when you watch games, it doesn't matter if it's NFL, basketball, football,
I know.
Everybody would have to be in on it in order to make that work.
So to your point, in basketball, the cheating scandals, it's not who wins and loses; it's point shaving.
Right.
Oh, okay. Like I'm a really good team, and
like
I'm playing against a scrub.
A few years ago,
we're up fucking 15 points. Let's just take 3 minutes off, and and now all of a sudden the betting line is altered or whatever. In football, I watched. There's a poster. I'm not going to say who it is, mostly because I want to be fair. It's someone that I don't have a lot of respect for. They posted this clip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "See, this is the cheating that's going on." Now, full context. It's a noon game with tens of thousands of people in the stands, and presumably at least hundreds of thousands of people watching locally, factoring in however many people are watching it at whenever it flips to it on Red Zone, or illegally pirating it, or Sunday Ticket, or whatever. So suffice to say, it's also on camera. There's a ton of eyes on it. And they go, you see this? Look at this play. Look at this play. This guy is running. He gets tackled. This guy pops up with the ball, and they give the ball and the fumble to the other team. It's bullshit. So I took the time to find that game and to get the full highlights from it. And this is what happened. The team that he thought should have got the ball, the reason why they didn't get it is because dude fumbles the ball, the other team recovers it, they're smacked immediately down because there's just someone falling on them. The ref was right there, and then the other team grabs the ball, stands up, and says, "No, we got it." But the angle that he used, the clip that he used, I don't think he was being dishonest. It just didn't show that because it was a random ass fumble between two fucking bad games, and ultimately wasn't that big of a deal because I don't even think they got a field goal out of it, right? But when people go looking for these types of things, you can always find it. In regards to corruption for FIFA, they had that horrible 2015 case where there was bribery and all that stuff flying around. You have I just looked in the Guardian's reporting that 6,500 migrant workers died. Like the headline is.
Yeah, I was gonna say that if there's any kind of corruption, I think it's at more of a higher level with like the people that organize it.
Right. Yup.
I don't think it really filters down into the games themselves. I know that Argentina was favored, which is what you expect. There's always teams that are favored. France was favored to repeat. Look where they got. They got back to the.
They couldn't even beat Tunisia, baby.
Right. All right. Well, thank you, sir, for joining me for another great episode of
Poetic, it was a lot of fun.
Carnage.
It was a lot of fun.
I just want to let you know, though, because when TCU beats Michigan, I'm going to be doing a lot of this. I'm just going to be strutting my stuff,
I didn't know you were so attractive.
Even my poet's like, yeah, I won't mind if you win now. Sure.
I listen. I'm off that. Continue on.
Yeah, so it's been a great episode, man, and I look forward to doing another one with you again. I think as it goes on, because football season is going to be over at some point, and we'll probably be concentrating on March Madness and NBA stuff,
draft,
hockey, all that good shit.
We'll cover some baseball and some basketball as needed. Your Blazers, their team. Their team. No, they're a real. That's a real fucking team. I haven't been able to keep up with them. I know like the Virginia Cavaliers, they're ranked 6 or something, but they've lost a couple games in a row, and so they're better than my Wildcats, who can't beat anyone ranked. Like we have. I was surprised we're even ranked that high, but it's just how it goes. They're real good. College basketball, there's a lot of loaded teams. It's going to be a crazy tournament. And that's the funny thing about the rankings in basketball too with college, because it's not even so much like you can have your rankings, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot come tournament time. It's just who's going to win, who's not. So that's what's cool about March Madness. Yeah, the rankings matter for seeding, because seeding definitely matters. Seeding alters drastically. Right. What happens. And every now and again, you get some teams that are just so, like the team that Gonzaga and Villanova had a couple years ago, where it's just like they're playing a different game. Yeah. Honestly, your Cavs when they bounced back from that, and I remember telling you, look, man, I know you lost that horrible first round game. Almost everyone's coming back. They're going to be dominant next year. I'm picking them to win it, and it's like with that team, like after 5 or 6 games, I was like, yeah, them boys are pissed. Unlike my Wildcats, who shit the bed last year, and they're like, fuck it, we'll figure it out in the last 5 games or so. We're Kentucky. We can just scream, go Cats, and we'll fucking win games. But yeah, we'll get to all that. And again, hang around. I'm going to say my goodbyes to you afterwards. But everyone who's watching, thank you. I know that Neko and I will be watching a movie that a young gentleman from Maryland has made a new horror film called Night of the Axe. We're going to check that out, give a review of it. I might be interviewing him in a couple weeks. Neko will probably be out of the country at that point. She's getting ready to go back out. I've got my top 5 albums of the week coming out soon. So if you want to check that out when I have it posted, I'll be posting this tonight. Many thanks for the people that follow us and watch this. Subscribe to my channel, please. And give a lot of praise and thanks to Mr. Poet here, who's so kindly to join me and do this. It's a lot of fun. We love sports. So if you love sports, this is the show for you. And without that,
Have a good night. We will see you all next time.
You see me for you.